Hi, True Avatars! Welcome to the 17th episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. This week, I am thrilled to welcome back Zoe Straw, game dev extraordinaire who you may remember from episode 11, which is an awesome episode, by the way, and you should definitely go back and check it out if you haven't listened yet, please. Zoe is a transgender woman, her pronouns are also she, her, and she works in the video games industry in Montreal, Canada. Hi, Zoe. It's so great to have you back on the show.
Hi, hello. I'm so happy to be back. I'm trying to think of something funny to say. I got nothing.
You don't have to, because I think everything you have to say is going to be super awesome. Because this week is a very special episode. Zoe just helped launch Aloft, Astrolabe Interactive's new game, into early access this week on Steam. Also, Zoe recently participated in a game jam, which is where developers from small teams try to create a game within the span of 3 days.
Oh, it's not necessarily 3 days. Like 3 days is the one that we did. I think the most common length is 2 days, but there's also like ones that are a week or a month long. Like there's all sorts of jams. There's no like set rule set.
Some people do that sounds month? No.
Month works for people who have like really busy day jobs, and it's like, oh, I might only have 10 hours a week to work on this.
Oh, so it's not like a month like straight, you're saying. You're saying
yeah,
like it's like a few hours here and there. Okay. I was like
game jams are crunching. You would die if you tried to do that for a month straight.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I guess technically speaking, aside from weekends, like real game development is like a game jam, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But before we get into to Aloft and before we get into the game jam, we're gonna talk about what we've been playing, and then we'll jump into this week's headlines. So, Zoe, what have you been playing lately?
Precious little. We've been very busy. I started Final Fantasy 9. I know I talked about starting Final Fantasy 7 the last time I was on, and then I didn't continue and I started 9 instead because that's my girlfriend's favorite game. Which is really, really good and I like it a lot. I think I'm like near the end of disc 1. That's what she said. And yeah, it's super hype. It's also adorable because she's like, this is her favorite game and she's played it a bunch. So like every time I'm playing it, she's just like sitting along, like humming along with the soundtrack, and it's very, very cute. Aww. She also like will like advise me like, oh no, you gotta steal from this boss. He's got good stuff. Which stopped being unique advice when it was just every boss, but I am remembering to steal from all of them.
That is good advice.
I really, really like how the theft is handled in that game because like theft is a move in a lot of JRPGs like that often doesn't feel that meaningful, but I like how in this one, every item you can steal seems to be something, like every boss has like major items that are like usually better than the stuff you can find at the store at that time. So it's not like game breaking, but it puts you kind of like a tier ahead, and I like it.
That's good, especially for those older JRPGs where like there's a lot of grinding involved.
Oh, I like grinding. That makes the autism button in my brain release the happy chemicals.
So what platform are you playing it on? Are you emulating it? Are you playing it on like the PS1? I know they've done a couple like quote unquote remasters with quality of life improvements.
I am playing it on my Anbernic RG40XXH, which is it's my new dumb emulation handheld. I think I showed you my first dumb emulation handheld the last time I was on here. I got one for my girlfriend, and then I was like, hey, it's cute and gay if we have matching handhelds, and I got one for myself. And she's been playing hers a lot. She's been going through all of her like favorite childhood games. But yeah, I'm playing it on that. It's really nice. It's like Linux based. I love these handhelds. Miyu just came out with a new one that I was like, oh, I'm done buying these. I don't need to buy any more. It's a waste of money. And then now I'm morally obligated to buy their new one. I feel like a victim somehow.
Some of us like collecting handhelds. It's fine. It's totally not unhealthy.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm eventually going to have like 20 devices that all have the same basic specs and do the same thing. And it's fine. It's fine.
I'm lucky that I can only afford a Steam Deck, so.
God, I love the Steam Deck. Oh, that thing is incredible. Let's see. I haven't played this yet, but I still haven't played Undertale. That's I went on like a first date with a girl like a couple weeks ago. And when I mentioned that I hadn't played Undertale, she was like aghast. And now our second date, which is tomorrow, is literally just, okay, we're going to cuddle in bed all day and you're going to play through all of Undertale. And I'm like, okay, I can do that.
I think we've talked about Undertale on the show before, and I think I might be the only person in the world that didn't like it.
I haven't played it, and I'm also a hipster asshole contrarian, so we'll see what I think. I know it has good music. I've heard like remixes of Megalovania and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's a bop. I can fuck with that.
Oh no, the music in it
Um,
is amazing. It's so good.
I've also been getting into Portmaster on the aforementioned Anbernic handheld, which is really really cool. Actually, that was something I like totally was like looking forward to. Like, oh, I can tell Zoe about this. Um, I think you're like a couple years younger than me, right? But we're kind of the same general age group. Like, I'm 33, right?
Yeah, I just turned
So
30.
okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Welcome to old. But like, so you remember when we were kids, like Flash game websites, you know?
Yeah.
Like they had a very specific vibe of just all of these like random ass weird games, and some of them were bangers, and some of them were horribly inappropriate, and it was just kind of like this weird grab bag of like hobbyist stuff that people had been making. Um, that's a feeling that I've never really felt in like the modern games. Like old Flash games are kind of a vibe, but my handheld is Portmaster, which is basically just a an app that facilitates like browsing and installing like hundreds and hundreds of random Linux based ports, and a lot of them are like just random ass homebrew games that were never made with any expectation of money by like small people or like small teams or like even just individuals. And going through it, it has that vibe again of like browsing like Newgrounds or something and just going through all of like the weird Flash games that they had. And that like even though every single one of these games, well, most of these games are things that are completely new to me, that feeling of like going through this weird stuff is like really really neat. It's this just this, and they're all super small files. Like none of them are big installs. You can filter it so that you can only see like the several hundred games that are free, and it's just like that's been neat to go through because it's a mix of like you know off market clones of commercial games and uh weird, also inappropriate stuff, and like stuff that's clear like homages to retro stuff, but it's all like it all has that like kind of like adorable I had no money and made this in my free time feel to it, which I find very endearing.
It sounds like a gold mine for queer games.
Maybe I don't know. I haven't filtered by that, but like I mean, a lot of it is like old Linux games. This is like, well, actually, no, it's Portmaster. So a lot of these are like, Windows games that get ported to Linux. There is also like commercial games on there. So like, you can play Undertale on it, or like Balatro, or like Stardew Valley, and basically what you do is you download the launcher for it, which basically facilitates the Linux patch, and then you go into your like Steam or GOG install and you drag that into a folder that they set, and then that will just turn it into a Linux game.
And it just plays like it should.
Yeah. It's also interesting to see how like 16 by 9 is kind of the standard aspect ratio, and my device has a 4 by 3 screen. So it's neat to see who planned their UIs to work in 4 by 3.
So
Which
what I've been playing, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I think I'm done. Yeah,
No,
I don't
if
want
you're
any.
playing more, I'd love to hear, but I don't have much to say. I was just going to be like, I'm playing a game we're not talking about till later, so.
I also spent the entire last podcast talking about how stoked I was for the new Indiana Jones game, and I feel like such a bitch because I played the first like 5 or 6 hours of it and it was great, and then I stopped. Like the classic, I'm such a serial game not finisher. I feel like an asshole.
But you played it on Game Pass, right?
I did, yeah.
So you didn't pay for it at least, or at least you paid for Game Pass, but you didn't buy like
Yeah.
the whole $90 game, so
Well,
like you're
it's like
fine.
it was great. Like it was really, really good. I don't know. I guess I got busy, Which fair. We've been leading up to our launch. The holidays happened. God, what was the date of our last podcast? Was it in December or was it in November?
Yes, it was somewhere in there. It
was
was
like a
either
few
late
weeks ago.
November or early December, yeah.
Yeah.
The only
Okay, so
reason I
that
know it
was
is because it was the episode I moved the podcast over to Podbean. So uploading it was like uploading that one episode was specifically a nightmare, not because of anything we did, but just because I tried changing podcast hosts from Spotify and it was a mess. I only just finished getting it fixed like this week, so
Well, I do see the new episodes are still on Spotify. I
Yeah, it took
think.
a couple days because they created two shows basically, moving it over when it wasn't supposed to. I did everything it said to do, and then it was like, no, you still messed up somewhere. It's like, oh, okay.
Wow, I
But
opened
yeah,
up
it
my
should be working now.
Spotify. I opened up my Spotify to your podcast, and then the sidebar has Sophie in it. That's pretty on point. Yeah, that's. I think that's me. I've probably played other random things, but nothing that's coming to mind. I mean, I'm always trying like 1,000 random new. Like most of what I try is just like little retro games, you know, like, and a lot of it is just like, oh, I'll boot up this arcade game from the '80s for 20 minutes, and it's cool, and then I never touch it again.
That's fair. I find that with a lot of games that I try, I just don't have like the time to finish them, and I'm like, oh, another shiny new game that I want to play. I'm trying to get better about it because I found like in doing this podcast, I found like lot of really cool and interesting queer games, like especially indie games, and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna add that to the list, and I'm also gonna hope that I like once I play this game, I hope that the developer is cool and they want to come on the show and talk about it, and then I've like my regulars are recommending games to me, and then all my guests are recommending games, and like my Steam wish list, I try to keep it small because like I want to keep it like manageable so I don't go completely out of control, but it keeps growing and growing and growing, and I'm like, oh, I have like 100 games I want to play and feature on the show, and I want to give every like game its like time in the spotlight. I don't want to just like do like a listicle on the podcast and just talk about like 10 games. I want to do like a Psychroma episode. I want to do like a Caravan Sandwich episode. You know, like a Miska Tiny Tail. That's another one. Like if the developers are listening to this podcast right now, I've emailed them. I want them to. If they don't respond, that's cool. But I'm gonna like highlight your game anyway. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, you're handling this way more reasonably than me because I'm like starting a billion different games. Like I literally had a goal one night where I like had a night off of work and I was like, I'm gonna try 5 new games tonight. And I did it. Great.
Oh my god, that's a
Oh,
lot.
I'm playing through River City Ransom right now. That's really fun. Well, I mean, a lot of these are just like tiny little like retro games. Like because a lot of what I play now is retro games, the cost question has just been completely divorced from like my playtime. So like there's no sunk cost fallacy. So I can just try whatever. And a lot of them are like arcade games or like, you know, retro games that are really small and short. So like, you know, you can kind of grok the experience of the game in a pretty short time frame. It's cool. It's like it's really neat. I love retro games.
I think you would enjoy if you haven't heard of it. It's called UFO 50. It's not a
Oh
queer game
yeah.
either, but yeah.
Oh, I really want to play that. Also supported by Portmaster.
Oh, that's awesome. So for anyone who doesn't know, UFO 50 is a game where a small team of developers got together and they made 50 games that like could have theoretically come out on the NES like back in the 80s. And I think it was the NES. It wasn't. It might have been the. Anyway, they pretend the UFO was a console that no
Yeah,
one heard of
it's
from the
really
80s.
cool.
Yeah.
It's
So
it's really really cool because they developed this entire like fictional history of this console that never existed, and like I haven't played it, but I kind of know about it because it's what everyone it's what all the indie hipster people are talking about. And it looks real good, cause like yeah, this entire fictional history of a console, like these games all have like release dates, and some of them are sequels to each other and stuff. It's really neat. It really gave me an idea of like, you know, I did a game jam with my girlfriend recently, and like I'm trying to make more smaller games just because I want to finish stuff more. And I was like, oh, it would be really like it's a cool framing device for smaller games, you know. And
yeah.
then it made me think like, oh, it would be cool to like tie together all of your like smaller projects into a framing device like that. Uh, just wholesale stealing their idea, but doing my own version of it. I can't announce anything. I'm never gonna do this. Game ideas are easy. Actually making them is work.
Yeah, I find that with all creative projects. I'm like, I have a million different creative projects I want to do, and then like, I'm lucky I'm doing the podcast. So, but let's jump into the news because we have a lot to discuss today, and there's not a lot of news, thankfully. Last week there was a ton for being the first week of January, but this week there's not too much. And for anyone who's wondering, we're not going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 in this podcast. Actually, the time of recording this, the previous night I recorded with the Amy's. We recorded an episode on the Nintendo Switch 2, a bonus episode. Go check it out. We talk about just the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal. But today it's mostly like Microsoft headlines. There's one headline about the wildfire, and then yeah, just two more Microsoft headlines. One good, one not so good. So anyway, the first headline Sony and some of its LA-based developers are donating $5 million to wildfire relief efforts. And this article comes from Video Games Chronicle. On Twitter, they said, Los Angeles has been the home of our entertainment businesses for more than 35 years. We will continue work with our local business leadership to determine how best Sony Group can support relief and recovery efforts in the days ahead. And so Naughty Dog, known for The Last of Us, Insomniac, known for Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man, and Santa Monica Studio, known for God of War, made similar statements. Have you been following the wildfire in LA?
Not closely, but I mean, it's pretty big news. I feel like every couple years we have like major crazy wildfires on the East Coast, and every couple years they're worse than the last one. I don't want to see what the next one looks like, because this is fucking apocalyptic.
Yeah, every single like hurricane, every single weather event, every single wildfire, it's like record breaking against the previous one. It's like the worst we've seen in 100 years, and it's like every year there's something that's like the worst we've seen in 100 years.
It's like the climate is changing. I wish there was a word for that.
Yeah, they should figure out what's going on and fix that problem, because that would be great.
Just like put a big band-aid on the ozone layer like they did in the 90s.
You mean capitalism?
Yeah. Is that a band-aid? I am so divorced from reality. I am just imagining a big cartoon band-aid on the atmosphere.
No, when you said that, I thought that too. And I'm sure many listeners, especially this being an audio podcast, I think we've painted a picture of a giant band-aid just being plastered over New Zealand.
Like a giant like guy who like lovingly spreads it on the ozone layer and then like gives it a kiss. Just like, there you go. All better.
I wish it were that easy. So our next headline is Microsoft wants to create a gaming handheld that improves on the Xbox and Windows experiences. So this article is actually from the busy week we had last week, but I wanted to save it for this week because A, we had a lot to talk about last week, and B, I thought this would interest you, Zoe, because as you've said, you're big into handheld gaming. But Xbox has made it no secret that they're working on a gaming handheld to rival the Switch, the Portal, and the Steam Deck, and The Verge caught up with them to discuss their plans, and especially their plans to improve the Windows experience on a handheld, which so far isn't too great. So from the article, and when I say on a handheld, I'm not talking about a specific handheld, just like when Windows is on handhelds, the experience isn't super great. But Jason Ronald, the VP of quote unquote next generation at Microsoft, which is a super cool title, as much as I really don't like Microsoft. But he said,
it's a cool job title.
Yeah, it really is. He said, we've been really innovating for a long time in the console space. And as we partner across the industry, it's really about how do we bring these innovations that we've incubated and developed in the console space and bring them to PC and bring them to the handheld gaming space. We're focused on really simplifying that and making it much more like a console experience. Our goal is to put the player and their library at the center of the experience and not all the Windows work that you have to do today.
So you want to make a Steam Deck?
I mean, it sounds like they do want to make a Steam Deck, yeah.
And I love my Steam Deck. My Steam Deck is one of my favorite things in the world. So like that's, you know, they're talking about innovating, but it's just they've recognized that now there's space in the market for a device like this, and they want to get their finger in that pie. They're gonna make something that is comparable to what exists. Microsoft doesn't have a great track record with like new hardware. Like the Xbox is their one success, but like whenever Microsoft tries to make, like they tried to make a smartphone, remember the Windows Phone, they tried to make Zune, remember iPods, like for the last like 25 years Microsoft has repeatedly failed to break into portable spaces. So I mean, you know, I guess we'll see. It's not impossible they might make something really good. I definitely feel like whatever they make is probably just gonna launch into a market where like, because Microsoft's not the only person making stuff like this now. The Steam Deck was a game changer. Like I think that it revealed space in the gaming market that people hadn't really tapped before. Like, and it's also like this really cool hybrid between like Valve had been working on like Steam OS and their Steam controller and their input layer and all of these things for a long damn time. Those were very mature things that then they combined into a really slick piece of hardware with the Steam Deck, and that changed things. Like, I think a lot of people realize that they want their own Steam Decks. So Microsoft is going to jump into that, and there's probably going to be like 5 other companies doing the same thing, and you're going to have a lot of very similar devices competing with the Steam Deck. And in terms of hardware, I'm sure a lot of them are going to be better because it is not necessarily logistically difficult to just put in a better chip or a better screen. But Steam Deck isn't good just because of the hardware. I mean, it is a solid like powered or it's a solid price to performance ratio, but Steam Deck is good because of the software. Um, and that software is very mature and well designed and thoroughly tested. And I don't know if I believe that Microsoft will come up with a UX that good. Because the Steam Deck only works because of its UX. If you had anything else running on that, it just wouldn't work as a device and nobody would like it.
Well, I think that's what they're hoping to fix, but I also think the big thing too that Microsoft has probably realized and why it's not really technically natively available on the Steam Deck or any device is that Game Pass doesn't work out of the box on any of these any of these handhelds. You have to like you have to do some creative tinkering, at least creative by my standards, because I don't really know how to do any of that stuff.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, I am a computer programmer working in game development, and I looked up, like, how to get Game Pass working on my Steam Deck, and, like, I could do it, but it's just enough work that I can't be asked.
yeah, so, like, I think Microsoft would be a lot smarter to just enable Game Pass on Steam Deck, especially if everything is an Xbox, quote unquote. But also, if they're going to launch a gaming handheld and try one more time to have, like, a niche, like, their own console and their own little corner in the console market, it's like making a Game Pass focused handheld that can run all those games without cloud streaming. I think it would be their last ditch effort to save their like exclusive gaming space.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking about, like, how feasible it even would be to just say, like, okay, Game Pass is on the Steam Deck now, because, like, Game Pass is a bespoke piece of software that is, like, it's basically its own DRM, right? Like, that's what it's there for. It's there to stop you from installing these games. Like when you install a Game Pass game on your PC, it goes into, like, a separate hidden folder and everything, and it's actually really difficult to modify the contents of that folder. Um, Game Pass has a lot of built-in, or at least it did a couple years ago. I don't know if it still does. So, like, Game Pass has a lot of, like, built-in security that I don't know if it's as simple as just, oh, we launched it on the Steam Deck. I'm sure that their security people have 1,000 reasons why they just can't do that. Um, Although as a consumer, it's objectively a good decision that would be amazing for everyone who has Game Pass and a Steam Deck. Like, there's a lot of Game Pass games, and I would love to just be able to easily install and launch them on my Steam Deck, but I don't think Microsoft would or can do that.
I mean, I would be okay with at least the concept of it because I mostly play my Steam Deck at home because it's kind of big and bulky. I don't really take it everywhere.
Yeah, that's a bed handheld.
But that said, though, I do like to play it on my couch at home when I don't want to like sit on my PC or I don't want to play games on my TV or my partner's watching something on the TV. So I'll take out my Steam Deck and it's basically my portable PC. But
100%.
Because I'm working, like I'm out playing it at home rather, they could at least get cloud streaming working on it. So like, especially like a game like Indiana Jones through Game Pass on the Steam Deck streamed when I have like, in theory, access to like an Ethernet cable if I want it, right? I mean, they could at least do that to get it going, to at least say, hey, this is also an Xbox.
Yeah, and I mean, it can run on the Steam Deck because there are ways to install Game Pass on it. So like we know it's possible, but I don't know how janky the support is. I mean, Microsoft, like, I think we both agree that we would rather just see Game Pass working on the Steam Deck. Like, that's obviously better.
100%. Plus, the Steam Deck, I think, will be cheaper than whatever Microsoft releases.
Whatever Microsoft releases is going to cost, like, $1,000 Canadian. So, like, I don't know, what is that, like, 800 American?
I think it's even less than that. I think it's, like, 700 or 750 now. Our dollar's bad.
Oh, God, it's 690. Oh, no.
Yeah, our dollar's really bad.
Why did you make me Google that?
But speaking of trashing Microsoft, there is some bad news too. Then maybe it will make us not want to support this this handheld anyway. Is that there's been more layoffs? I know the layoff news is always a downer, and I'm sorry to be our last news story to end on a downer. But I do think it's important to keep tabs on these things and where the industry is at. Because, like, as consumers, I just think it's best, especially as we're all part of a very marginalized demographic, to be aware of where our money is going. When we spend it, to have this information on which developers are making cuts when they're also trying to sell us entertainment and happiness. Like, this podcast isn't here to tell you who to support or where to spend your gaming dollars. I just hope that if I report the good and the bad, you, the listener, have an idea of the state of your favorite developers and publishers and where your money is going. Anyway, so from VGC...
I'm here to tell you what to buy. Buy my game, it's Praxis.
Yes, you should definitely support the indie developers on the show. That is a different story. But when we're talking about big corporations, your money is your money. But definitely support small indie developers, especially all the ones I want to have on the show, and I'm gonna at least highlight on the show regardless. But yeah, Microsoft made a small number of layoffs that affect quote unquote less than 1% of employees. I'm sure they think that makes it sound better than it is.
1% of Microsoft is a lot of goddamn people.
Yeah. And they also didn't say where the cuts were. I don't think they actually made an official statement outside of the small number of layoffs, quote unquote, and the less than 1% of employees, quote unquote. I think they also said that, or at least VGC found out that the cuts are in Microsoft's gaming businesses, among other departments. But again, no real specifics or numbers. So we don't even know if it was Microsoft Gaming, if it was Xbox. We don't know. So
Microsoft is a staggeringly huge company, so 1% of them is still probably tens of thousands of people. I just pulled that number out of my ass. I should probably Google it because I don't actually know, but 1 second.
I mean, even if Microsoft was 1,000 employees, which I'm sure it's way more than that, but let's say it's 10, that's still 10 people. And I think that's still a lot. There was a publisher on last week, a small publisher that laid off 3 people. And even though they did it in the kindest way possible, for lack of a better word, I still think 3 people is too much. I don't think you should lay off anyone.
Yeah. I mean, if there's no money in payroll, that's just, there's no money in payroll.
Yeah, but at that point, I blame the people running the company for not making better choices that led to.
Nobody is less of a fan of layoffs than me. These are all of my colleagues, but especially in indie, it's sometimes there just isn't an option. And if your company doesn't have any money, the worst thing you can do is is not actually fire them. Keep leading them on, because this is a thing that happens in certain situations. Is the company isn't willing to admit that it's over if they're failing, and so they'll keep people officially employed with them, but they'll stop giving them hours or whatever, and then those people can't collect employment insurance. They can't collect their benefits that they've earned, which means that they're even more screwed because they don't have any income and they don't get EI. I know people who have been in that situation, and it's yeah. I wish that a business being successful was strictly a measure of making good decisions. Especially with indies and stuff, it's just it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, it's true.
But Microsoft doesn't have that excuse. They make more money than several gods, probably.
And additionally, I don't think Microsoft probably has very few Canadian employees. So I think the EI thing might only apply to us here in Canada. I don't know if
here and anywhere else that has a functioning economy and benefit system, America is shocking in what it doesn't have for its citizens.
Yeah. But on to happier things.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about Aloft?
I'm super. Wait, no. Can we go back to how much of a nightmare the world and capitalism is? That sounds way more fun.
Okay, so yeah. Anyway, the wildfires. That's just the start. No, I'm kidding. I hope it's not just the start. If I'm being honest. But
the wildfires have become sentient.
Oh my god. But yeah, let's talk about Aloft, because that's definitely a much happier subject, and I'm very, 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 very excited to hear what you have to say. But before you dive into it, I just want to give some context for listeners who either new to the show or missed the episode where we did talk about Aloft, although I've pretty much talked about it on every episode at this point. But
oh my god, I have a fan.
You do. And I love the game, and I wish I had more time to play it.
You've probably played it more than me at this point.
Somehow I doubt that, unless you don't play it at all at work.
I've put hundreds of hours into it in development, but a lot of that is in the dev gym and stuff. I haven't actually had a lot of time to properly play it as a bespoke playthrough, which now that it's out, I'm super duper excited that I can do that with my friends.
Yeah, it's a great multiplayer game. So for anyone who doesn't know, Aloft, this comes from the Steam page. Soar the skies in Aloft, the co-op sandbox survival game set in a world of floating islands. Build any island into a skyship, your home in the clouds. Find lost knowledge, cure the fungal corruption, and brave the hurricane to restore the ecosystem. So my take on it is it's essentially if Skyward Sword was a cozy yet horrifying survival game. And it launched this week in early access.
I describe it as the exact opposite of Subnautica. Subnautica being underwater, whereas this being entirely in the sky, it's opposite in terms of where you're going on the y-axis or the z-axis, but also like Subnautica is a really good game. I'm not talking shade about Subnautica, but Subnautica's fucking horrifying. It's like one of the scariest games I've ever played, and it's not even meant to be a horror game. Whereas Aloft is just like the absolute best comfy vibes. It's like the yin to Subnautica's yang.
That's a good comparison, actually. In fact, that's probably how, if anyone is gonna like ask me like what if I can recommend like a cozy survival game, I'm gonna say it's the antithesis to Subnautica, because like that's a good way of putting it.
Take the heart attack that you had when you were in the middle of like just blackness in Subnautica, and then a Leviathan came, and take the extremeness of that emotion and then convert it into just chill vibes.
And honestly, it is pretty chill. So I did play. I got to play. I wanted to play for more. I only had time to play for an hour this week between work and like life and the podcast too. But I did play it. I also played the pre-alpha demo. I think it was a pre-alpha demo that was up before.
Yeah, the demo's definitely like very outdated. We've improved the game a huge amount since that demo.
Oh yeah, for sure. And honestly, I thought the demo looked really good too.
Yeah, the demo's great. Oh, there were people who played like just the demo for like a shit zillion hours.
Really? That's so cool. So the game is super pretty. What I liked about it though is like just how relaxing it is. Because when I did play the pre-alpha demo, I got killed by a mushroom, and it was that point I kind of like checked out. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm like, this is too stressful for me. And at that point too, it was also super late, and I was like, I should probably go to bed. But in this, I don't know if this was in the pre-alpha demo, but it's definitely in the early access version that just launched, is you can turn off enemy spawns, which is immediately what I did. You can also set it so you can craft any item for free if you want. I loved having these options, like just nice little accessibility options. The character creator is fun. I wish the mustache wasn't a default, if I'm being honest, but that's like my one criticism.
It's randomized actually. However,
okay.
Yeah, when you open up the character creator, it will randomize like different like body types and hair and stuff. But you'll usually have a mustache because no mustache is only one of many different options for facial hair. So if roll a random number from like 1 to 10 or whatever, the option to not have one is only going to be as likely as it is present in the set.
Yeah, and all the options too aren't specifically gendered. Like nothing is like divided between like the male character and the female character option. It's just like, here are your body types, here are your facial hair types, here are your like eye types. Like it's just like everything is like in a gender neutral setting. Like you can just pick whatever you want and create whoever you want to be, basically.
Yeah,
which
is really
super cool.
You want to be like, bearded, but also have like one of like the femme body types, and like also the body types are like fairly size inclusive. I mean, they don't get as big as some games. I think that's like a Collider issue, but like this is all stuff that was like done and decided on before I ever got there with all of my gender stuff. So it was really cool to like come into the project and just be like, oh hey, they were actually like really mindful of like making something that was like fairly inclusive. Which isn't a surprise from my workspace, because like they're really, really, really inclusive, and I love them a lot.
Didn't you say your boss shared the podcast episode you were last on?
Oh yeah, he shared it on LinkedIn, which is cool. I mentioned like, oh, I was on this podcast, and then I posted it, and I didn't think anyone was gonna listen to it, and like I had like a couple coworkers like, hey Zoe, I listened to the podcast, and I was like, oh cool.
It's our most listened to episode.
Yeah.
By a lot. So I appreciate that. If you could share this one, that would be awesome.
I'm gonna track that down to my height.
Fair. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about specifically that I got to like really experiment with in the demo was the gliding. It felt amazing to glide around between the islands in the sky. The controls were inverted, thankfully, by default. I'm sure you might be able to uninvert them maybe, but I didn't check because the controls just made sense. I honestly spent most of my time just doing that, gliding around. You can speed up and slow down at will. There's like kind of a cooldown, but if you're like there's this really cool thing with a lot of the actions in the game where if you like press the button a second time when you're like, I don't even know how to describe it, but like there's like a gauge that when it gets to the top of the gauge, if you like a tiny little like yellow line appears, and if you hit the button during that part of the gauge, you can just do the action again for free without having to cool down. Which is,
it's like
awesome.
I think the way I describe that is that it's kind of like the active reload from Gears of War, which is that like it's a bar that fills, but there's a portion on the bar that you can use to preempt another use of the thing. But we put a lot of work into like, game feel and making sure that the moment to moment gameplay of Aloft feels like really, really good. Like I don't actually tend to like a lot of like survival crafting games just because I do find that a lot of them feel very like undercooked and kind of janky. And when I joined the team, I was Aloft was already a couple of years in development, and I was immediately struck by like how like incredibly polished and like cohesive of a vision there was for this game. That like it really kind of like struck me like right away, like, oh shit, this is actually really good.
It is really good. I really want more time to play it, and at some point I'm hoping too to get. I know Ekami, who was on the podcast, she also played the pre-alpha demo. I think at some point she's gonna pick up the early access game too. And I really want to just like jump in with her and do some multiplayer. I think that'd be super fun. But anyway, I want to hear about what it was like to launch, because the game launched Wednesday, right?
Yeah, we went live at I think like a few minutes before 10 a.m. on Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time. I thought I sent you the video of us pressing the button, which was like, we had like a countdown of everyone on launch day. That's a private thing, like, but like of just like, us doing a countdown and like suddenly the game is live, and then I jumped over the couch to check the store to see if it was there.
Oh, and was it there like immediately?
Yeah. Yeah, so like that's a funny thing is like the actual like go live button on Steam is something that you don't press very often because you don't release a game very often. So then it was like, oh, we're pressing it, and then there was like a little like circly loading bar, and suddenly we're all just like, oh shit, did it work? And it did.
Well, it must have, because I bought it. I feel like if, let's say, I assumed it was gonna go live at 1 p.m. Just because like I feel like most games do. Although I didn't realize there was a go live button. I just know on Nintendo and PlayStation there's like a set time when all the games, like after you press the go live button, it goes up. And generally Steam updates everything on their site at like 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I just waited till like 2 p.m. and I was like, oh, it's there. I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna download it to my Steam Deck. I downloaded it to my PC right after. I was streaming my work computer to my home, and I like lost connection because I was downloading the game, and I was like, totally worth it. But that's so cool that you can just like press it and it goes live, like no delay. Even when I like launch a podcast, like it takes a few minutes to get on Spotify, and it's a tiny file.
Well, it's not instantaneous. There was like a few seconds, but like it is definitely like you don't have to wait until 1 o'clock.
Fair.
Yeah, Steam is honestly like part of what I do in my job is like a lot of like Steam stuff implementation, and like their API and their like software interface and stuff I really like. Like it's very clear that this has been designed to be easy to integrate into a lot of games. In my opinion, I'm sure that there's people who have been working with it for years that hate it because programmers are never happy with their tools, but like I like it a fair deal. I had to figure out how to do a lot of Steam stuff in the capacity of my job, and like I was definitely surprised at like how easy it was. Like, oh, this is like super like not a big deal. It's easier than I thought it would be to do things like add like achievements and stuff.
That's really cool. I have like a million questions about like game development, but I specific like oh my, like I could actually like sit here for like a week and just like pick your brain about game development. But I'm very curious about early access because I've never had a conversation about early access before. So, like what does launch day look like for like a game in early access? Like, is it like, are you guys like just like reacting to like player reports? Are you like reading reviews? Are you watching streams for bugs? Like, what's going on launch day?
Well, I mean, I can definitely talk about our game, but I don't know if necessarily it's the sort of thing that there's like a standardized approach. Like, I think that like early access is kind of like an agreement between you and your customers. So like different studios have different approaches to it, how much they launch and stuff. For us, launch day was really, really fun and chill. It was like super good vibes. We launched, and then we started watching Twitch and like seeing people cover the game, and like I'm not gonna lie, I was so unbelievably anxious leading up to it because I didn't actually know like we'd spent all of this time working on it. Everyone was so invested, and like we knew we had fans and community and a lot of wish lists and stuff. Like, but and finally, once that moment comes, it's like, okay, are people gonna buy this? Uh, and they were, and then like it took a little while to get the impression that like, oh shit, stuff's going really good. And I was like really really happy, but like my emotions are tired because I feel like this has been one of the most emotional weeks of my life. Other stuff just happening in like my personal life, but just like, you know, I love my company and my team so so much. Like it's kind of amazing. Like I feel like I've landed somewhere really incredible. So, the seeing that our game is doing well that represents kind of like, continuity. It's like, "Oh, yes, great. I still get to keep working with these people."
So you were watching streams. Like, was it like, did you watch it? Like I don't know even really what I'm asking. Like, were you watching streams just to like enjoy people watching the game? Or like, were like certain developers like sitting there like watching like, oh, that shouldn't do that. Like, we need to fix that. Or, and also too, on top of that is, how are you communicating with the players to get feedback on early access?
Oh gosh. Well, we have like I actually created like a bug report tool in the game. That was one of the earlier features that I implemented. So we've got that. We have like a really active Discord server. We're looking at Steam reviews. That's more of a question for like our community manager. Like I have an idea of what we're doing because ultimately, some of these things turn into like bug tickets that might come to me. But like, um, yeah, like we have a lot, like it's just you have to pay attention. Like you have to pay attention to kind of all of the places. Like, players are not one monolithic body that are going to communicate like in one place. So you have to keep an eye on like, your Steam reviews, your Discord server, etc. Um, as far as like the streams and stuff go, yeah, like there was definitely like, we were kind of like actively listening and being mindful, but launch day was also something where like we got to really like take it easy. Outside of our community manager, she worked so incredibly hard that day. Like, oh, she's a hero. She spins a lot of plates. Like community management is like a really really big job and she kills it. So definitely like a shout out to Haley. She rules. But like for the rest of us, I'm not going to say the rest of us. Definitely like people had stuff to do. There was definitely like an air of like, oh God, today's a big deal. But for the most part, we were just kind of hanging out in streams to get an idea of what people thought, to see if there were any kind of common patterns of what people were saying. But also as the day went on and everything seemed to be really positive, like it got more and more chill. And yeah, like I don't watch streams at all. Like that's not a part of gaming culture I've ever interacted with outside of just sometimes I watch games done quick because it's cool. So our launch day was actually the first time that I'd like sat in a stream and like interacted with the streamer. And it's also kind of cool. Like you go into the chat and you'd be like, hey, I'm Zoe. I'm a programmer at Astrolabe. You're playing my game. And then like, everyone lights up and like the streamer's like, oh my God, Zoe, I love your game, blah, blah, blah. And it's like you feel like a bit of a celebrity. It's very cool.
Mhm. Well, I was going to ask too, and I'm not sure if you're allowed to answer this, but you did mention you might be working on bug tickets, but I can't imagine like it's just like 8 to 10 hours of just sitting there like waiting for bug tickets to come in. Like, what does your day to day look like now that you're like the game has technically quote unquote launched in early access?
I mean, it honestly looks like it did before. Like launch day was, very celebratory and fun, but like ultimately, like, any game is going to have bugs. I think that Aloft launched in like a really stable state compared to a lot of games. That's just a reality of like early access, but like we're the one thing that is like a little bit different about my job now is that now that we have a game that's in production, we have to be a lot more mindful about whatever we're pushing into it because like anything that we release as like a patch or an update or whatever is immediately going to be in players' hands.
Right.
So this is my first like really big project that I've actually released with. So now it's definitely like, I'm feeling that like I don't know, like performance anxiety of like, oh shit, I definitely have to be like a lot more careful with my code now.
That's
I don't
fair.
think I don't think I can really get into too much detail about technical stuff because then we're kind of getting into the particulars of development and design. But like, yeah, like the game it launched in like a really good shape, and I mean, it is not done. Like this is an early access game, What we have is like a lot of really great stuff, but like there's definitely like a lot more stuff on the way that I'm absolutely not allowed to talk about, but it's really, really cool. So I promise it'll be good. Um, but yeah, like my job is ultimately gonna kind of be like fairly similar to what it was before. Like I, do bug fixing, I do asset implementation, I do a lot of little things that, I work under two much more seasoned programmers, and they tend to handle a lot of like, bigger systems, like network architecture stuff. I'm not as far along in my career, so I feel like I'm a little bit of like a jack of all trades, where like, a lot of people on the team can kind of come to me for help with stuff that if they were to talk to one of the other programmers about, they might have, bigger fish to fry and they might not be able to get to it as quickly. But it's like they can come to me and be like, oh, hey Zoe, like the collision on this has a problem or something like that, and then I can just like hop in and be like, okay, there you go, I fixed it. Because a lot of it is just like, little adjustments and stuff. It's really fun. I like what I do a lot because like I like running around and jumping between different tasks, and yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, every day. It sounds like every day is like a little different, which keeps things fresh.
It's
Um,
really nice. If we're doing like a major, I mean, I would say every few days. Like usually, like this week I'll be on like, one week I might be on bug fixing, one week I might be on asset implementation, and it's like, there will be batches of similar tasks that you'll do over the course of like a few days, and then like you'll get into, the other thing. Um, but I like it a lot. Like I like jumping between tasks because it keeps me dynamic and it keeps me learning. Like I always I never want to be in a position where I feel like I've learned everything because it's fun to learn.
and also, I know in the show notes I kind of skipped over this, but I still want to talk about it. I wanted to ask you about the launch party that you guys had.
Oh god, it was a blast. Yeah, like that was probably one of the happiest nights of my life.
Aw.
Just because it was symbolic of like a major like kind of like life and career milestone, like for the last few years I'd been like, I went back to school, I transitioned, I moved out, and like all of this stuff to kind of get myself into a position where I could like be working in the games industry. And then this was like, the launch party of like my first big release of my career. Because before that it was like contract stuff. I was working as like a research assistant and that kind of thing. And this was the first thing where it's like now I can like, point to a game on the store and be like, yo, I made this and it's sick. But yeah, like the launch party, like, yeah, we went all out. We had like a catering company that had like, custom cocktails and stuff that were really cool. Like we had custom cocktails that were themed after things from our game. Like there was like a Mictor, which is one of the strains of like fungus. There was a Mictor cocktail that was kind of like colored like that. We have like a thing called island corruption where certain islands in the game will be corrupted. So the non-alcoholic cocktail was called uncorrupted, which was cute.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
oh yeah, and like I mean, I ended up I went with my girlfriend and some other friends, and she ended up like zeroing it on the non-alcoholic cocktail, but also just throw like a shot of gin in, and that was like what she ended up drinking a lot. And I think about halfway through the night, I was like, yeah, I want to switch to these because that's actually it was really really tasty. Um, but yeah, it was just like the best possible vibes. Like our CEO gave a speech to everyone, and there was lots of like games press and people there, and lots of clapping, lots of hugging. Like he gave everyone shout outs. Who he gave like me a shout out. He was like, yeah, I was like, oh my god, he mentioned me by name, and like raised
Mhm.
my glass, and then after that it was everyone just like partying, and like we did lots of karaoke. Oh god, I got this one picture of me and one of my coworkers, Nikolai. I sang Creep by Radiohead in karaoke, and like he came up and he grabbed the microphone. And so like there's this one picture of us like singing back to back, and it just looks like super epic. It looks like we're gonna like belt out a power ballad. Yeah, it was great. Everyone was just like it was really like a sign of like how amazing our team was, that just everyone had the best time and was like super happy and stoked. Um, and it helped that it was an open bar too, but it was such a good time. Um, yeah, I mean, ultimately like the food was really good. The bartending team that they got was really good. It was a big night. And I got to like meet lots of people too. Like like you get to run into like your coworkers like partners and friends who they decided to bring in stuff. I ended up bringing like 4 people, and they were all trans women because that's what like most of my friends were. So like our group chat where we were preparing, I think I called it like the Astrolabe launch party trans contingent. Yeah, we went to like get like Chinese food beforehand at this place on Saint Laurent, which was like a really awesome restaurant that I like a lot. Hey, if you're ever in Montreal and you're looking for cheap but fantastic Chinese food, go to Restaurant Amigo in Saint Laurent. That one's free. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's only so many ways I can say that, like, yeah, it was like a really, really sick party and the vibes were perfect.
No, that's awesome. Sorry, I muted myself to like clear my throat. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries.
So before we move on to the game jam, I just wanted to ask if there was anything else you wanted to say about Aloft, the launch party.
God, I mean, I think I covered it. Like, I really, really, really love my team, and the game that we made is really cool. And like, yeah, we're in early access now, so like, there's still work to do. But like, now that it's out there and people are playing it and people seem to like it, it feels really good. But yeah, I mean, I'm just repeating myself at this point. It was a really positive experience.
Well, Aloft is now on Steam in early access, and despite, the title being early access, the hour that I played of it felt very polished. Like if you had told me this was the final game, obviously content-wise, I can't speak to that. Like I only played like I didn't even finish like the find 4 things to do this and then like really open up the game. I just glided around and like just like vibed for a bit. But like if you told me the game was finished, especially after playing the pre-alpha demo, which was obviously very early on, like I would have said like, yeah, this feels like a finished game to me. So like it's definitely worth buying into. Plus, early access games are generally cheaper than the launch version. So like it's a good time to like get in on a really cool game, and also like have like open up a dialogue with the developers. Like maybe not directly, but like yeah, you can leave Steam reviews. You can like stream the game. You can like use Zoe's bug report tool. So it's just super cool way to like influence games that you enjoy in small ways. So make you feel like you're part of something too. So
Yeah, I mean, our community is a big reason that the game is good because, like, even before we launched, we had like a really dedicated community in our Discord server, and they're all like super nice and positive. And like, whenever we had like betas or whatever that like people were getting their hands on, they were like a huge help because like QA is a thing where like even with like dedicated professional like people looking for bugs, ultimately when you have thousands and thousands of people who are playing your game at all hours, that's going to be better at finding like weird fringe cases and stuff just by sheer numbers, right? So our community and having like tools for them to communicate with us is like really, really important.
yeah, when I went to just speaking of the size of the community and like the dedication of the community, when I went to go buy the game, like, and I saw the page, like there were like so many reviews already. Like I said, you said the game launched around 10 a.m. and I went around 2 p.m. to buy it. Like in that 4 hours, like there were streams on the page you could watch. There were lots of reviews. Like it just looked like. I think I also Googled it too, and I saw that there were also pages talking about it from months ago that had just been like updated recently, like forum posts and stuff like that. So like it was really cool to see that like yeah, so many people were already on board and talking about this game. I feel like it's going to be a hit. I think it's going to be very popular. It might be sleeper right now with a dedicated community, but I think like as soon as you said Subnautica, something clicked in my brain, and I was like, you're right. This is like the antithesis to Subnautica, and that game has like a huge, but also like dedicated cult following in the gaming community, and I think Aloft has that potential too. It's just a matter of time.
Well, we've consistently had like pretty good numbers on Twitch, and like our game was in bestsellers on Steam for a while, so like we're doing good. This is a small team, so like obviously we're probably never going to hit Call of Duty numbers. A girl can dream, but like we seem to be doing really good. And I can't really get any more specific than that because that's getting into like business stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You can just see from like public metrics and stuff that like it seems like our game is succeeding pretty well right now. So I'm really happy about that. Because again, like for me, it's just like I want everyone to thrive, and I love my team, and I want us all to kill it.
Yeah, go play Aloft. It's so great. Like I said, I only played an hour, but what I played of it, I loved. Like if you just want something that's like, if you just want to vibe like in Tears of the Kingdom when you're on the Sky Islands, and you just want like a cozy, stress-free version of that, like this is your game. Just turn off the enemy spawns. You can set it however you want, accessibility-wise, and just like go nuts with that.
And our building mechanics are really, really cool. If you like building stuff, like all of our building art is really beautiful, and there's like a billion different pieces. If you like building stuff, some of the constructs our players have made have been like really amazing.
Yeah, especially too, like, I guess the comparison to Skyward Sword is almost not great because it's more Tears of the Kingdom Sky Islands, especially with like, I know you said constructs, but I immediately like clicked. I was like, oh yeah, you building things, constructs. They call them constructs in Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm sure that they're not related in the same way. You're using construct like to build things, whereas constructs are an actual thing in Tears of the Kingdom. But my point, and I'm in the weeds here, but the point is like, the building of Tears of the Kingdom was a huge thing too, and actually that'll probably be working a Loft's favor because people will post what they're building on the internet too. So just like that helps build the community up. Anyway, sorry, I'm gushing. I think it's so cool. Listeners, we're gonna get into the game jam shortly, but please go play Aloft. We're gonna take a very short break, and then when we come back, we are going to talk about Zoe's game jam.
I can't take a short break. I'm too tall. I can only take a tall break.
And we are back from our break, and Zoe is still with us here. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, hello. I'm Zoe.
And we are the Zoes, and one day maybe we'll have the Zoes and the Amy's on, and it can be a Zoe versus Amy showdown. But until that time, we're taller.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your game jam. So like we talked a little bit about it earlier, but for anyone who might have missed it, or just to re-clarify, like what exactly is a game jam?
Okay, so a game jam it's like a hackathon for games. No, I'm kidding. That's terrible. If you don't know what a game jam is, there's no way you know what a hackathon is. It's a short burst of game development. Basically, you apply for a game jam. There's usually a theme or some kind of constraints that you have to make your game within. The theme is usually not announced until the jam starts, which means that you can't really start making it in advance. And then basically you have some very short amount of time for you and or a team to make a game that fits within that theme. And then usually it's a contest, so there will be like winners. People will vote on them. It's usually like 2 days is the standard, I think, so it's like a weekend. The one I did was 3 days. I've seen them that are a week long. I've seen them that are a month long. I'm describing the standard format, but there's all sorts of different like variants of game jams. Like there's a lot of different ways a game jam can be, but like it's usually just like you have like 2 or 3 days to make a game, and it's like you have to start and finish the game in that time. And then people vote on it and see who likes it and what's up.
So what kind of game did you make?
So we did this was a smaller game jam. Like some of them are huge, like Ludum Dare or the Game Maker's Toolkit game jams are like massive, but we just did like a little one because ultimately we had the weekend that we wanted to do it, and we just kind of looked for one. I did it with my girlfriend, by the way. And the theme of the game jam was gravity. So she knows calculus because she knows math stuff. So we created like a top-down space shooter, and we built it around like a gravity simulation. I called it Gravity Strike, which I think that there's a game on Steam called that, but it's fine. There's only so many words. Yeah, there is a game called Gravity Strike on Steam. Okay, I'm a thief. It looks completely different though, so it's fine.
Well, you made Gravity Strike 2. It's fine. It's totally official.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to get caught by those Gravity Strike people. Oh god, the developer of this is just one guy. Yeah, I can plagiarize him. It's fine. I'm kidding. No, we made something completely different. We made a top-down space shooter with gravity as a core mechanic, so the ships, the enemies, and like the projectiles that you fire are all affected by gravity. And the whole idea was, in order to kind of encourage you to use gravity as a core mechanic, the enemies that you fight have like hit scan weapons that will just kind of like they'll kill you super fast if they get close enough and if they get line of sight. So you need to kind of abuse the gravity mechanic to like bend your missiles around like stars and stuff in order to hit them. It's very simple. Like, you know, again, this is something that we had to make in 3 days, so it's not The Last of Us Part 3. That would have to be a week-long game jam, but like...
Well, next time you should do the week-long game jam, because I would really like Last of Us Part 3, thank you very much.
We're gonna make it even more gay and tragic. Yeah, but like I'm really proud of what we made because like I think with a game jam game, like you really just want to focus on like one core mechanic, one core idea, and just try to make that feel as good as possible. And like I definitely like the thing that I made felt really good. Like it was like nice and juicy. Like I made sure to implement like all sorts of little like bits of juice, like screen shake, and like make sure that the camera is super responsive and it's not just like, bolted on the player in the hierarchy. And also, like, my girlfriend is a programmer, a very experienced programmer, more experienced than I am, but she's not a game developer. This is like kind of new territory for her. So I also, there was like teaching her a little bit, which I was actually really proud of her because by the end of the jam, she was writing like, AI scripts and stuff in Unity, which like I didn't expect her to be doing a lot of Unity stuff in the couple days that we had, but she picked it up really quickly. So like that was hot. Smart girls with technical skills are hot.
Unfortunately, I have no technical skills. I press button in video editor and make video go boom.
Yeah, no, that's actually what I do is I just press button in code editor and game happen. But yeah, so like yeah, we did it. I mean, I guess there's a lot to talk about because I mean, it is like a nice little microcosm for like the process of like game development. And it was really fun. And like game jams are very like kind of like shake and bake stuff where it's like and one of the cool things about game jams though is like there's lots of games that are like, commercial successful games that started as game jam games. And it's like a game jam is a perfect opportunity to experiment with an idea and create a prototype. And then if you really like it and it's good, then you can be like, oh, cool, maybe there's something here to turn into like a full game. Like Downwell started as a game jam game. Baba Is You started as a game jam game. God, I bet if I Google it, I can find more. Games that started as game jam. Oh, wow. Thanks, Google. It literally just corrected for me.
Google is listening to us right now, so.
The Binding of Isaac and Inscription, apparently. Super Hot, Surgeon Simulator, Celeste? I knew that was a Pico 8 game. I didn't know it was like a Pico 8 game jam game. Oh god, Pico 8's an entire other thing to get into. I have so many weird areas of gaming that I'm getting into that I want to talk about, but there's only like me and like two other people who are into it. You ever heard of Pico 8?
No.
Okay, I'm not going to say it now because it's like a whole long 20-minute tangent. But yeah, so like we did this game jam and we got the theme. So this was unique for a game jam because we actually had the theme beforehand, which was gravity. So we knew ahead of time that we had to make a game that was going to use gravity as a theme. However, this game jam has a limitation, and that limitation doesn't get announced until the actual jam starts. So it's a little bit different from other game jams. So you know the theme ahead of time, but there's a limitation, and you have to satisfy the limitation. Now, the thing with the themes and limitations and stuff in game jams is they're very open to interpretation. Like, gravity can be whatever you want it to be. Essentially, if you can make the argument that it satisfies the theme, then it satisfies the theme. So the limitation that we got was constant motion, which was great because we were making a game about gravity. It's pretty much impossible to stand still in our game because there is a physics-based gravity simulation going on all the time. And if you try to stand still, like the pull of some nearby star will start pulling you into it and you'll die.
So what was it like working with your girlfriend?
It was really fun. It went really, really well. Yeah, I mean, me and her get on really good and like we have fantastic communication. It was she'd never done anything like that before, so my biggest worry for a lot of it was just like making sure that she was having fun and that like, she actually enjoyed it. And she seemed to really enjoy it. Like, we're actually talking about doing a game jam the weekend of Valentine's Day, and we'll find like some like, if we can't find like an actual jam, we might just make our own and have like some sort of like, randomly generated romantic theme. But we want to do a game jam for Valentine's Day. But yeah, like I was really impressed.
That's weirdly
with her.
Romantic. Sorry, that's weirdly romantic. I love that.
My absolute gayest fantasy is like a lesbian game dev power couple. Like I am not capable of coming up with something gayer than that in my head.
It's pretty gay. So.
Yeah. But yeah, like so
like when you were working with her, like did the fact that she didn't know how to use that she didn't know how to use something, that she hadn't made a game before, like you were obviously also like you were working on the game, you were teaching her how to what was that process like? Did you like lose time because you were like catching her up? Like did like learning it actually like maybe like lean into like make I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that we started doing was like I started working on core mechanics. So I was working in the game engine. I was working with Unity and C#. she actually had never written in C# before too, so she was learning a new programming language.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
hot. I mean, once you know a couple of programming languages, they're all kind of the same in all the ways they count. So what she was doing was generating the model of gravity simulation. So basically, the whole idea was that like we would randomly generate levels. Those levels would have gravity wells represented by stars, and we weren't going too crazy with the simulation. So those gravity wells were in fixed locations. And then, based on the locations of gravity wells on a map, we were generating a grid at a specific resolution where at any point on the grid, you could query it and find out what the sum total of gravity acting on that position was. And then that would be applied to the rigid body of the ship. So the idea is that, like, rather than trying to do the, physics calculations on every object on every frame, we actually just had like cached references to what the gravity field within the map was going to look like that we could generate at runtime. So that's what she did first because she understood the math behind this stuff a lot better than me. She knows calculus. Like, she's an engineer. And I mean, she like, I think her degree is in like maritime engineering. So like, boats and stuff are kind of like ships. So yeah. But yeah, like, so her job there didn't actually involve a lot of specific game dev stuff. She was creating like a representational model of gravity vectors that could be stored into, a grid of a, customizable size and resolution, and basically all the parameters for what the level needs to look like could be fed into that. And then she hands that off to me. I plug that into the generators that I'm creating in the game engine. We're basically working on these two pillars of it concurrently. I mean, that's the fun thing about a game jam is like, you need to plan it properly. If you don't spend time thinking about what you're making and planning it, you will not succeed. I've done like a dozen game jams in my life. This is one of only 2 or 3 I've ever actually finished. Most people don't finish game jams that they start. A game jam is really hard. And that's okay. Like you don't have to make something. You don't have to finish something. You always learn stuff. It's good to try new stuff. But yeah, so that's what we did. Sorry, I cut myself. I'm gonna close Blue Sky because that's a really cool GIF. But like, game jam. Yeah, so basically, like, you need to make sure that you break up the work properly. And like, one thing is that like we're both programmers. Like, neither of us are artists. Like, I work as a technical artist and I do like a lot of art implementation and like I do know how to use a lot of art tools, but I'm not a professional artist. And I mean, she does lots of creative stuff, but the creative stuff that she does is not necessarily applicable to like game jams or to like game development. So when it came to like graphics and sound and like the actual like audiovisual presentation of our game, we had to get creative. Like, the music in our game is various tracks of me beatboxing and other just like random like 2-second sound clips that we then fed into Audacity and applied like a bunch of like modulation to change how they sounded, and then we just clipped them together into something that vaguely sounded like a techno soundtrack, because neither of us are musicians and don't know how to make music. And we had, again, we had 3 days to do this, so we didn't have time to like learn music.
No, that's fair. I didn't even like consider that music would be like, I didn't even think about music. When you were talking about like the grid system, I was like, that's so cool. That must have taken like every ounce of your time. And then you were
No.
like, but we also did music and sound effects. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, the sound effects, we used a tool called God, what is it? SFXH or SFXR or something like that. SFXR, yeah. So that's actually a tool that was made in a game jam for game jams, which is basically like very, very tiny, clean 8-bit sound generator. It is designed to just like you push 2 buttons and it will give you randomized game sound effects. And then you can download those into a file that you can then import into any like game engine. So like that's what we're using for most of the sound effects in our game. And then the music, we did that. The graphics are like very simple vector graphics, but like I definitely like wanted to give it some flair. So it's like, okay, well, add a post-processing layer with some zoom and some bloom. And then, have like a camera on orthographic projection. And then, hey, we have this map that's defining like what the gravity is that's acting on any particular point. What if then we generate like a very kind of like a grid in the background of the game on each of those points, on each of those intersections, And then what if we then recolor those grid points based on the intensity of gravity at that point. So all of that comes to where it's like, I'm not an artist, but I am a programmer, and you could use programming to make stuff look cool. Um, and yeah, it all came together into a game that was pretty fun to play.
That sounds fucking awesome.
It was
That's like
super
really
fun.
cool, really cool.
Yeah. Um, it was really, really fun. And like, it is kind of like very exciting. Like, game jams are like kind of hype because, like I said, like she's working on this like gravity representational model and other stuff. I'm working on like core gameplay, and like she's doing music. I'm doing sound. Like, we're kind of working separately, and then it almost only comes together at the end. So the last day after we'd been like, really like cramming for a while, it wasn't until the last day that we started to like put it together and get a sense that like, oh, this feels really good, you know? Like, this actually feels good to play and is fun. Which we didn't know. Like, you don't actually know if your game is going to be fun until you can play it. Uh so it was like, it's very exciting and hype when like you've been working on this for a couple days and you start to put it together and you're like, "Oh shit, it's fun, thank God."
No, that would be so stressful. But also, like, yeah, you said you're doing like a truncated version of the development process. So like in a development process, you have like different stages of development where you're like, okay, here's like a tech demo, here's like, and obviously you're just doing the tech demo side, but you still in that truncated version, you're like on this, like if it was me, I'd be like, and I was making a video, like I'd want to screen a cut, for example, early on to see what it looks like. But it sounds like, and the equivalent of that in gaming would be like, okay, let's try what we have so far, but like you have a weekend. Like you can't keep going back to like play it and like try it, and like you can't get like feedback from other people. I mean, maybe you can, but like there's the time element too. And I'm assuming like, did you have like a window each day where you could only work on it, like let's say from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., or were you like, was it just like 48 hours straight of like constant game development?
We went to the gym a couple times, I think, but otherwise we were only working on it. We had meal prep done, we had a lot of soda and junk food, and we just kind of crammed for the whole 3 days, and it was awesome.
So no sleep?
Oh yeah, no, of course we slept. No, no, you
Okay.
gotta sleep
Oh my
during a game
gosh.
jam or you're gonna die. Yeah, no, like we got like a full night's sleep. We made sure that we were eating, and like, we took occasional breaks to go outside, probably, I hope, but like all of our waking time was pretty much dedicated to the game jam.
Yeah, I've done something similar in film called a 48-hour film challenge, and I, as the editor, when I'm doing those, I don't sleep because you get there. Generally, the editor gets there on like sometime midday Saturday on that weekend because the editor does not need to be there for when they're filming or when they're doing the script. I'm just like, but like I sleep the Saturday night, like the Friday night into the Saturday, and then I show up at wherever it is, and it's usually wherever the people I worked with in the past would always find somewhere far out in the middle of nowhere to shoot. So it'd be like a 2 or 3 hour drive. I get there, and then from that point I arrive like until Sunday night when the film is like done and delivered to the contest. Like I don't sleep because I'm editing all night because the people who are like acting and like making the film are like working during the day, and then like the footage comes to me at like 9 p.m. and I'm like, okay, I guess it's time to start working. So it's good to know
Yeah.
that like in a game jam you can sleep.
Yeah, because I was just thinking like, oh well, you're gonna need to have footage to edit, so your job kind of starts after theirs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, it was really cool. I want to do one again. That's the first game jam I'd done in years. Like, I was a much more baby dev when I did my last game jam. Um,
So what did you learn from this that you might apply in future games? Like, is this something that like this game you made, like, is this something that's gonna go into like you're gonna like keep working on it? Or is it something you're just gonna like? Are you like what did you
um,
learn from it?
I learned some basic calculus. I learned that me and my girlfriend work well together, so that was cool
Hmm.
because now we're talking about like doing it again in the future. But yeah, like I got some calculus out of it, which was really useful for me. It also was just really fun. Like, I don't think I did anything super advanced as far as development skills where I can point to it and just be like, hey, this is like an example of me like learning like a big skill. It was definitely like a show for myself of like, oh, how much better of a developer I am than I was, because like it went very smoothly. Like, we submitted that game with a few hours to spare. We were not working overnight. We were doing like, like maybe 12-hour days, and everything was properly scoped, and we planned out the work properly. We were able to catch problems as they came, and it was just like I don't know, definitely a proof that like, oh hey, I'm actually like good at this. And I learned some calculus. Kind of. I keep saying I learned calculus. I learned why calculus is so damn useful and how to get started in learning it, because I realize that there's a lot of things that I do that are calculus based without me realizing it. And if I actually like spend some time just learning like basic formulas and stuff, that's going to help my job a lot.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's so good that like not only did you get a game out of it too, like you said, not everyone finishes their games, but you got a game out of it. What I've seen of the game looks freaking cool, by the way. But also like you learn stuff that you can like take forward with you on like future games and like wherever you take your career. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, in the abstract, the more you work on games, the better you are at working on games. And it's fun. Like, I'm very lucky that my job is also my favorite hobby.
Yeah, it probably doesn't feel like work, right?
Uh, let's go with that.
So can people play your game anywhere?
Yeah, it's on itch.io. I'm Zoe Leet on there, so it's like called Gravity Strike. I mean, again, this is a prototype that we made in 3 days, so it's not exactly like the Citizen Kane of gaming. God, I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase a lot. Games and movies are two different mediums. Stop trying to ape movies. Movies are better at being movies than games are. It's fine. It's totally fine. Uh, but yeah, itch.io, Zoe Elite, Gravity Strike. It's like a cool little arcade game. It's pretty fun, I think. I don't think we're going to continue into full development with it. Maybe like, me and my girlfriend both have projects that we're working on. Like I'm working on a Christmas themed Metal Gear Solid parody in my free time that I actually want to like develop into like a proper demo that I could maybe release at some point and then see like where that goes. And then she's working on like a cool app for queer people called Closet Swap, where she wants to make something that kind of like can fulfill the function of like Facebook Marketplace for like specifically like trans and queer people who might need to like share their like wardrobes and stuff. Like I went through so many different like shifts in my wardrobe when I transitioned that like I've given away a lot of clothes, so like it's to help kind of facilitate that sort of thing.
That's amazing. That sounds so cool. You said it's called Closet Swap?
Yeah, I mean, this is like still like an early prototype. So like if you Google it, I don't think you're going to find anything. It's just these are just side projects that we're working on in our free time. My Christmas themed Metal Gear Solid parody is called Naughty Gear.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that was the game you were working on when you made the Reddit post that I found you on and we met, right?
Yeah, the sexy cafe picture where I'm all like goth and I've got my fingerless gloves. Oh, I have those fingerless gloves here. Let me put them on. Hey there, Neo here.
How you can tell voice training works.
Yeah, oh god, I mean, I've been getting lazy with my voice. Yeah, I mean, let me see if I can go back down to my like old voice register. So this is what I used to sound like for most of my life.
No, you still sound like Zoe doing a voice.
Yeah, no, if I try to go down to my old register, I can't access it anymore. Like the muscles change. Like voice training's crazy. Um, God, did I do my shot last night? Yeah, okay. My date did my shot last night.
Oh. So tell me about Naughty Gear.
Oh God, I really hope. I can't make any promises with that because like that's a prototype that I really love and I've put a lot of work into it already and like I'm hoping that it can turn into a demo, but yeah, so I love Metal Gear Solid a lot. Metal Gear Solid is probably like one of my favorite series in games. Metal Gear Solid 3 is specifically like one of the chief pieces of the human species artistic output. I love that game so much. So I'm making a game where I was like one of the fun things about Metal Gear Solid is the tone, like the kind of like over the top stylized military action drama mixed with like kind of pretentious philosophizing, you know? Metal Gear has a very unique tone that I love a lot, and it's great and I love it unironically, and also it's rife for parody. So I'm making a game where you're gonna play as a girl who's infiltrating the North Pole, and it's like basically a parody of Metal Gear Solid. And like I've been writing like the story and stuff, and the whole idea is that it's like a tonal parody of Metal Gear Solid. So like I'm gonna try to keep it with that like very serious like industrial spy vibe of the first Metal Gear Solid game, but it's the North Pole, and all the guards that you're sneaking past are elves. Um, and like I even want to like narratively go into like a parody of like the philosophizing, because oh well, Santa has a naughty and a nice list, so that sounds like a great opportunity to talk about moral relativism. So like yeah, I have like a lot of writing and stuff to do, and like I got to get like the codec working, but like just imagine like something that's totally very similar to Metal Gear Solid, but you're like a little girl infiltrating the North Pole, and like your codec will ring, and like, some like Christmas themed like cyborg ninja type motherfucker calls you and just like, you know, have you ever thought about what actually makes someone naughty or nice? And then go off on like an unhinged philosophical tangent about the nature of good and evil as reflected by Santa's naughty and nice list. Um, yeah, the narrative hook of the game is going to be that like on Christmas Day, the world's children woke up, but there were no presents.
Oh my gosh.
And so the UN has to send in. So the North, in the lore of my game, I'm just talking shit now. So in the lore of my game, the North Pole has like a Christmas magic field that any adult that tries to go to the North Pole will just find like a frozen tundra. So it has to be a kid. So we're gonna have like a badass kid who gets released from juvie in order to partake in this mission for the UN Special Secretary to the North Pole.
This sounds so funny. I can say, okay, yeah, no, you need to finish this so I can play it, because I want this. I want to play it so bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good sign that, like, every single idea I have with the game makes me laugh more, you know? Like, God, do I have my notion? I guess the official talking points of the podcast are kind of concluded now, so now I'm just, like, going on, like, my stupid unhinged idea. Oh yeah, no, I thought of the subtitle too, Naughty Gear, The Last Gift.
Oh my gosh.
It's
well,
like,
I mean, it kind of... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you know how Metal Gear Solid is like a tactical espionage action as like the tagline? I have a page of just me brainstorming alternatives to that, like festive covert reconnaissance, Yuletide clandestine operations.
Well, bringing it back to the game jam, you did talk about like how like, you learn things when you make games, and you made, like you went through the whole process of making like basically what is a complete game, or at least a complete game demo in one weekend. So I'm sure you like learned a lot of stuff that you can now apply to Naughty Gear, right?
Actually, the topic of calculus did come up because I have a core mechanic, which is just being able to pick up and throw items. Not a very unique mechanic, but there's a way that I would handle it previously, and then I'm realizing that like, oh, well, like if I actually like generate the arc of a parabola programmatically with calculus, I can have a lot more control over like, any projectiles and stuff in the game. So I'm probably going to use that when I implement that mechanic.
Oh, that's awesome, and super handy too.
Yeah. Uh. Yeah, where is my Naughty Gear? God, I still have my Scrum board that I made. Yeah, plan your projects. Oh my gosh. The most important skill you can learn as a developer or programmer is like project management. Like, there's a guy at my office named Felix. He is our like COO, I think is his title, but like it's a small company, so everyone wears a lot of hats. But like he kind of like keeps everyone like on track with everything, and he like delegates tasks and like keeps everyone on like that guy's job is like wrangling like 20 people, and it's amazing. Like he's so organized at what he does, and like that is the number one thing for making a game project work is just organization.
Yeah, I think that applies to a lot of things. It's just like,
yeah,
even this podcast, I need to keep it like in order, or it just gets unwieldy. So
yeah, I mean, anything where it's like you've got a lot of different people with disparate skill sets working on individual components of a larger whole, keeping everything focused towards that goal is like really difficult. And
especially
I know that
when
like
the people you're wrangling is just yourself.
yeah, so I mean, I've gotten better at like figuring out like I'm just looking at the Kanban board I made for myself for Naughty Gear and like all of the different tasks, and I have like major mechanics, art and presentation, levels, and content. I have a doing task, and then underneath each of those categories, I have like fairly detailed breakdowns of all of the different jobs and like the work that's going to go into them. And I haven't gotten to time estimation yet because I'm very bad at doing that for myself, but this is a skill that I'm still learning.
That's fair.
God, I really hope that I can finish that into a demo. Like I want to make a demo for Naughty Gear by like Christmas.
Well, I think it'll be very successful if and when you do get it out there. I think I saw some of the responses on Reddit too. People were pretty excited. I don't know. I don't know. I don't play Metal Gear. I might play Delta when it comes out because I've never played a Metal Gear game before.
You should
whether or not I
Solid.
play, sorry,
you should play Metal Gear Solid. It's really good.
Well,
and then you'll be able to answer the question: can love bloom on the battlefield?
But I would definitely play, regardless of Metal Gear Solid, I would definitely play Naughty Gear because that sounds freaking cool. And I know I said freaking cool a bunch of times. For some reason, I'm trying not to swear. I don't know why, but it sounds fucking awesome, and I would play it.
Why are you not swearing? Have you listened to me? I'm a computer programmer. I don't know how to not swear. I moved to Quebec, and now I'm starting to learn all of their cool Quebecois swears. Like, tabarnak de Chris. Oh, it sounds so good.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about the game jam before we wrap up?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, it was like really, really fun, and like, I mean, I definitely think that anyone who's looking to go into game development, like do game jams. It's a great way to like add stuff to your portfolio. Like, you know, if you do games for game jams that you like and you finish the jam, like get it on like your GitHub or whatever your public repo is, or get a repo for it on like whatever your like public like project management is or your website. Because having games under your belt looks good, and potential employers are only gonna play it for like 10 minutes. So if it's only 10 minutes long, that's cool. But yeah, it's a really good way to like sharpen your skills and learn stuff and try new stuff. And who knows, you might make something on a game jam that ends up being like again, like we were talking before about like all of these really successful indie games that started as game jam ideas by other people, because I haven't gotten there yet. One day.
Well, thanks for joining me this week. It's been super insightful getting to hear about Aloft and your game jam. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was super fun as always.
Hopefully we can have you back on soon to talk maybe about getting into game development and elaborating and expanding on that rather.
Yeah, I want like queer game recommendations from you, because I don't actually know like a lot of like specifically queer indie games, and you're always talking about them, and like I would love to just like, you know, talk like, because I don't know like what's good. Like I have very specific tastes, but like I would love to play games that are within those tastes that are queer.
Yeah, it's really hard to find, like there's no like specific like there's like tags on Steam for like finding queer games, but like a lot of it's like porn, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but a lot of it's fetishized. So it's really hard to pick out like what was made by queer people for queer people versus like here's a cis dude who made like lesbian porn and they're putting it under the queer tag. That said, though, I'm hesitant to do a podcast where I just like only talk about like a bunch of queer games. It would probably be good in the long run, but I want to like when I do a podcast, I'd really like to focus on one queer game to give it like its spotlight too. So like I'm like
fair.
Torn both ways, right? So I'm still debating that.
Is Undertale a queer game? I don't know anything about Undertale. I have this date tomorrow that I'm going to play through the whole game, and
the
like
character
I don't know
is non-binary.
anything about it.
The main character is non-binary. And also Undertale spawned kind of like a sequel in universe follow-up game called Deltarune, which I'm sure your date will also probably recommend after you finish Undertale. So
oh no, another date with a cute girl. Whatever will I do?
And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks, True Avatars, for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. We now have a website, so I realize I should have probably gotten this website up before the podcast started, but better late than never. And the URL is trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can now find the show also on Facebook and Instagram under True Avatars, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube under the handle @TrueAvatars, all one word. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique and valid and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or a games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the aforementioned social media pages and the website. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.